All right, welcome. Have you ever really thought about what goes into a great language lesson? I mean, a truly great one. It's so much more than just a fun activity or a good worksheet, right? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the entire ecosystem behind your lesson planning, from those big national level philosophies all the way down to the split-second decisions you make in the classroom.
Okay, so let's get right into it. A lesson plan is never just a piece of paper, is it? It's more like this intersection where a ton of different forces all come together. I mean, you've got the official curriculum, the course book sitting on your desk, what your actual students need, and of course your own deep-seated beliefs about what good teaching even looks like. All of that gets poured into that single hour. And honestly, mastering planning is all about seeing how all those pieces connect. So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the big picture, the educational ecosystem. Then, we'll zoom in on the human factors. After that, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of designing the learning path. And finally, we'll wrap up with some of the practical tools for modern teaching that you can use every day.
All right, part one, the educational ecosystem. We're talking about going from this really broad philosophy right down to the nitty-gritty of classroom practice. This is all about those foundational layers that are always there, kind of humming in the background, supporting every single thing we do as teachers. Okay, this is a really important distinction to get straight in your head. So you have the curriculum and the syllabus. Think of the curriculum as the why. It's the big picture philosophy, the grand vision. The syllabus, on the other hand, is the what and the in what order. It's the practical step-by-step roadmap that takes that big philosophy and makes it actually happen in a classroom.
And you can really see how this works like a funnel, right? You start at the very top with these huge ideas, the curriculum. That gets distilled down into a syllabus. The syllabus gets broken down into a scheme of work, a sequence of lessons. And all of that flows down into that single lesson, that 1 hour you're planning for Tuesday morning. It really shows you that every lesson is just the tiny tip of this massive iceberg.
So this brings up a really critical question. One you should probably be asking yourself all the time. Is there a disconnect where you work? You know the situation. The school's mission statement talks all about fostering communicative skills, but then the final exam is just a multiple-choice grammar test? Spotting those contradictions, that's a huge part of being a thinking, reflective teacher.
Okay, moving on to our second section, the human factors. This is all about beliefs, methods, and cultures. So we're zooming in now from the big system to the actual people, you, the teacher, and the students in your classroom.
I love this quote because it just nails it. A lesson plan is so much more than a list of activities. It's basically a distillation of, well, you. Your own personal beliefs about how people learn a language, beliefs that you've built up over your life as a student and a teacher. They seep into every single decision you make when you plan. And of course, our own beliefs are shaped by the bigger trends in teaching. You can see this evolution right here. It's almost like a pendulum swinging back and forth. In the 60s, it was all about form, accuracy, drills, think audiolinguism. Then it swung way over to meaning, interaction, and real communication. Now, well, a lot of people talk about a post-method era, where the smart move is to be eclectic, to grab the best bits from different approaches that fit your students in your context.
But here's a really important thing to remember. No teaching method is culturally neutral. They all carry these hidden assumptions about how people should learn and interact. For example, a method built around lively group debates might feel really strange or even uncomfortable in a learning culture where students expect the teacher to be the main source of knowledge. The golden rule is to adapt your method to your students, not the other way around. So what's the takeaway here? You have to become a kind of anthropologist of your own classroom. Seriously. Forget stereotypes about where your students are from. Instead, just watch. How do they interact with each other? When do they tune in? And when do they tune out? Ask them what they expect from the class. Because every single classroom develops its own unique microculture. And your job is to figure out what makes it tick. All right, so we've looked at the big system and the people in it. Section 3 is where we get practical, designing the learning path. Let's talk about needs, principles, and the different types of syllabuses that are out there. So, how do we make sure we're not just guessing what our students need? The answer, the absolute starting point for any good course, is a needs analysis. It's basically the process of figuring out what your students actually need the language for. And it doesn't have to be some huge formal research project. It can be as simple as just paying close attention or as structured as a diagnostic test. But without it, let's be honest, we're just flying blind. And look, it really can be a straightforward process. It boils down to 3 steps. 1, gather some data. That could be through surveys, little interviews, or just observation. 2, analyze their context. Where are they now, and where do they need to be with their language skills? And 3, identify their preferences. Do they like group work? Do they want homework? Getting answers to these questions gives you a solid foundation to build on. Okay, so once you know what your learners need, designing the syllabus really comes down to 2 key decisions. First is selection. What stuff are you going to include? And second is grading. In what order are you going to teach that stuff? And to make those choices, you're constantly balancing a few things. Like, how useful is this vocabulary word? That's its utility. How hard is this grammar point to learn? That's learnability. And maybe just as important, how easy is it for me to actually explain this? That's teachability. Generally speaking, syllabuses fall into one of 2 big camps. On one side, you have product-oriented syllabuses. These are all about the outcomes. They see learning as collecting a list of items. Present perfect? Check. Phrasal verbs? Check. On the other side, you've got process-oriented syllabuses. These are all about the journey. The focus is on doing things, on activities like planning an event or solving a problem. The idea is that the language you need will just pop up naturally as you do the task. And that brings us to our final section, number 4, tools for modern teaching. Here, we're going to look at some of the practical things that shape our day-to-day teaching, like competencies, coursebooks, and the idea of autonomy. So take a look at this quote. This is a can-do statement from the CEFR, the Common European Framework. This is a perfect example of what we mean by competency-based teaching. See how it's not about, I know the past simple? It's about, I can describe experiences. The entire focus shifts from just knowing abstract grammar rules to actually being able to do something useful with the language in the real world. And let's be real, for most of us, the main tool we use is the coursebook. And they're great in a lot of ways. They give you a ready-made syllabus, tons of material, it's all there. But the real art of teaching isn't just following the book page by page. It's knowing when to skip a page, when to add something new, when to adapt an activity. It's about making the coursebook serve your students, not the other way around. You know, one of the biggest goals in modern language teaching is this idea of learner autonomy. And all that really means is helping our students become independent learners. We want to get them to a point where they can take charge of their own learning, setting their own goals, finding their own resources, and reflecting on what works for them. Our job isn't just to teach them the language, it's to teach them how to learn the language. A great way to think about this is to try and create a porous classroom. That means a classroom where the walls are kind of permeable, where learning doesn't just stop at the door. It flows between what you do in class and what students do out in the real world. And this can be really simple stuff, like asking students to bring in an article they found interesting, encouraging them to use language learning apps, or even flipping the classroom so they watch a video at home and do the practice with you. So when you pull it all together, what's the big takeaway? I think it's this. Designing a great lesson isn't like following a recipe. You're not a technician just carrying out instructions. You're a professional, engaged in this constant act of reasoning. It's about being informed, thinking critically about what you're doing, and, most importantly, responding to the real, live, complex human beings in your classroom. So, I'll leave you with one final question to think about. After hearing all of this, what's one small thing, just one, that you can do tomorrow in your very next class to make that classroom wall a little more porous? What's one step you can take to empower your learners and connect what they're doing with you to the huge world of language that's waiting just outside?